of 2025, I had a real decision to make. Should I buy a brand new Toyota GR86 with a factory warranty, 0 miles, and a completely clean slate, or should I buy a used Porsche Cayman with a mid-engine flat six design from the famed brand? Well, I chose the GR86, and about 8 months later and 2,100 miles later, this is an honest review of what it's like living with as your only car. In this video, I'll discuss why I bought the GR86 instead of the Porsche Cayman, what the GR86 is like to live with as your only mode of transportation, what it's like when you actually get to drive it on the weekends for fun, what other cars I might recommend you purchase instead of the GR86, would I recommend you buy the 86, and who should and shouldn't purchase it, and finally, where the channel is going. I decided that I wanted to buy a sports car. Two cars kept coming to mind, the Toyota GR86 and the Porsche Cayman, but they're not really in the same class. The Cayman is mid-engined, it has a flat six, and all the Porsche pedigree. On the other hand, the GR86 is a Toyota. It has a flat four and makes just 228 horsepower. The car I ended up going with was the GR86, which went for about $35,000. On the other hand, there was a really nice yellow Porsche Cayman from 2014 that had about 35,000 miles that was for sale for $38,000, so only a little bit more money. On paper, there was a real argument for the Cayman, but after I talked to some people about the ownership cost, as well as what the realities of owning the Cayman would be, I really decided that the Cayman was not the right car for me. So why did I end up going with the GR86 in the first place? Well, there was three main reasons. The first is the warranty. The GR86 comes with a 3-year, 36,000 mile factory warranty, along with a 5-year, 60,000 mile powertrain warranty. This was important to me as I didn't want to be stranded on the side of the road and then have to deal with a multi-thousand-dollar repair bill on the other side of it. Porsches are very reliable for German sports cars, but not compared to Japanese cars, which is where I was coming from. And they are not known for being cheap to repair either. I was quoted between $2,500 and $4,500 a year in maintenance costs to keep the Cayman on the road. On the other hand, for the first 3 years of ownership with the GR86, I won't have to deal with any maintenance costs as it's all covered in the warranty. The second reason came down to transmission options. At the price point I was looking at, and at the time I was looking, PDKs were the only Caymans available in my area. Now they were really great, and living in a hilly area, a PDK might have actually been better. But at the time, I wanted to learn how to drive manual. And my goal was to buy a sports car that was through and through a sports car. So that included a manual transmission. The GR86 did offer the ability to get me that manual transmission, and I also felt, tying into the last point with the warranty, that learning how to drive a manual in a car that had a factory warranty was going to be a better situation than not. So when you add those two factors together, I really was leaning towards the GR86. Now the third and final reason I opted for the GR86 instead of the Cayman came down to the motor. Now that might sound weird considering the GR86 has a flat 4 instead of a flat 6, but it ties back into reliability and the purpose-built nature of both of these cars. The GR86 comes with the FA24, which when I bought it in 2025 had a few years under its belt because the cars came out a few years earlier, but it's still a relatively unproven engine compared to the previous generation engine that was in the old BRZs and Toyota 86s. Now, having the factory warranty really mitigated any risk that might be associated with it. I knew that there were some issues on the track with oil pressure falling down, but that's not the type of driving that I would be doing. On the other hand, a 40,000 mile Porsche with unsure service history could have some IMS bearing issues or other maintenance issues. I think the generation of Cayman I was looking at didn't suffer from as many, if any, IMS bearing issues, but that being something that came up in the past was still a concern for me. Now, in 8 months of owning the car, I've put about 2,100 miles on it. And so to break that down, it's only about 260 miles a month, which isn't very much. However, there's some context that needs to be added before you jump to any conclusions about my desire to drive the car. It's not that I don't want to drive the car, it's just that I don't have a commute. So the only times I'm ever driving my car are to run errands or go see friends. I recently moved to a more car-centric part of the country, so I am driving it more now than I was, but for the first about 5 months of ownership, I was walking almost everywhere, and I only put about 800 miles on it. So the mileage is starting to ramp up, but again, I'm not driving it because I don't like it. I just don't have a reason to drive it very often. With that said, this is still my only car. So is it usable as your daily vehicle? Yeah, absolutely. The trunk is big enough for a small Costco run, and it fits my golf clubs just about. But you do have to put the back seats down if you're putting golf clubs in, at least with the length that I have. The rear seats are pretty much unusable. I only ever use them for a little extra storage. I've never put a real human being back there. I think that that would be akin to torture. But if you have an infant, you could fit them back there. It just wouldn't be a very comfortable ride. Now, noise is a big issue in this car. The insulation is fine on smooth asphalt, but on certain road types, the tires have a tremendous amount of noise that gets into the cabin. Now, I've heard that switching the tires over can fix this issue almost entirely, but I'm still on the original set of tires, so I'm not sure if that's true or not. But if I do get new tires, I will aim for ones that are meant to be quieter, and I will update this channel. Being a rear-wheel drive car, I don't know if I would recommend this for very cold weather climates. For reference, I live in Washington State, and so we do get some snow and some ice in the winters, but I think a set of all seasons will be totally fine. But if your goal is to take this skiing or into the mountains, this wouldn't be a single use car for that unless you know how to drive it well and you have a set of solid winter tires and a second set of wheels you can put on this car. I know the Topher has done this and it looks like a lot of fun to drive in the snow. I also don't think you could fit skis in the car very well, so in that case, I might recommend having a second car or just buying something more usable like a WRX. Now, the fuel economy is okay. I'm averaging about 22 and a half miles per gallon. I don't drive like an absolute maniac, but a lot of my mileage is done in the city. It's maybe about half in the city and on the highway. So I'm not just cruising and getting great mileage. If I'm really trying to maximize my mileage across a single drive on the freeway, I can get over 30 miles per gallon. But like I said, the average is 22 and a half since I purchased the car over the 2,100 miles, and that isn't including a ton of highway driving. In terms of comfort and suspension feel, I would say that it's completely acceptable. This car is definitely stiff, it's a sporty vehicle, and it will remind you of that, but it's not unbearable. I can drive this car every single day over rough roads, which there are quite a few of around here, and it's not jarring. It's not going to be a smooth ride. It's not going to be as smooth as even something like a Toyota Camry, but it will definitely not beat you up and the fatigue won't be too hard. So could you take this car on a road trip? Probably. It wouldn't be the most comfortable vehicle to drive for more than 2 to 3 hours. I think 1 to 2 hours is completely acceptable though. So I would just take frequent stops and make sure that you can pull over and stretch a little bit. Now, for stretching and size, I'm a pretty tall guy. I'm about 6'1", and I just about fit in the car. I think you'll see in some of the POV driving footage, my knee almost brushes up against the steering wheel, and I have this set as far back as I can. But you can certainly fit in if you're a little bit taller, but we'll get into more of that as to why I didn't get the Miata in the future. And here's where it gets good. On the weekends, this car really comes alive. I haven't had the opportunity to really wring the car out as I was waiting until I hit my first 1,000 miles before I revved above 4,000 RPM in my break-in period, and there aren't a ton of great driving roads that I've discovered in my area. However, when I do wring this car out a little bit, it is an absolute blast to drive. I love this vehicle. It handles really well. The handling I would describe as nimble and quick. The car can feel a little bit fragile at times, but I think that is something that I have to get used to coming out of a larger everyday vehicle into a small and light purpose-built sports car. The car is as responsive as I could imagine. The tires are more than grippy enough for the road. The power is completely adequate. I think that you would get bored of this power if you were coming out of something like a Camaro, but coming out of a RAV4, which I was, this is completely acceptable, and I think the perfect amount for your first sports car, which for me, that's what this is. It's not overwhelming, and it won't put you in a position where you feel like the car is getting away from you. I think that this is an excellent car to drive at 7/10. This is another reason why I opted away from something like a Cayman, which compared to people who drive expensive and fast cars, that might feel like a safe choice. But for someone coming out of a Toyota RAV4, even that felt like it might be a little bit too much to handle at first. And so I wanted a car that I could push the boundaries in and push my limits without feeling like the car was going to get out from under me and take me off the road. So driving the car on the weekend, this is where it gets really good. Admittedly, I haven't had many opportunities to take this car out on fun back roads yet, but the limited times that I have done it, it has been an absolute thrill to drive quickly. Now, this is by no means a fast car. I would describe this as a quick car. I would describe this as a nimble car and a good handling car, but not fast. And I think everyone knows that. With just 228 horsepower, this isn't going to be a drag racing vehicle. This isn't going to be taking any Mustangs or Camaros at the stoplights, but it's going to allow you to have a lot of fun at public speeds, which I think is the main purpose most people want to buy a sporty car like this. So I think for a beginner like I am getting into a sports car, this is perfect. For someone who wants to learn how to drive well and learn good habits instead of have the car hold their hand, this is a good sports car. I also think that if you want to learn how to drive a manual transmission, similarly to how I want to learn, this is the perfect vehicle. And if you want all of that in a package that comes with a factory warranty, again, this is going to be the perfect choice. I got ahead of myself a little bit recommending this car, but getting on to the actual recommendations section, would I buy this car again? For my situation, absolutely. Learning how to drive a manual transmission, wanting the factory warranty, and wanting a car that wasn't going to overpower me, this was the perfect choice. That's not going to be everybody. Some people are going to be okay with a little bit more maintenance risk. In that case, the Cayman would have been an excellent choice. Some people are going to want a little bit more of an open top feel. In that case, the Miata would be an excellent choice. But again, there are some size constraints with that vehicle. If you want a little bit more space, then something like the WRX or the Toyota GR Corolla are going to be excellent. Those are both also all-wheel drive, so if you are an outdoorsy person who likes to ski in the winters or you want room for a mountain bike, those again are going to be excellent choices. There's something for everybody at this price range. There's the Golf, there is used Camaros, used Corvettes, used Mustangs. So everyone is going to have something that fits what they're looking for. But if you want a purpose-built, affordable to own, maintain, drive vehicle, a sports car like this, then I recommend nothing else more than the GR86. So this is the first video I posted on this channel in more than a year, and this is going to be the type of content I'm going to make moving forward. In the past, I posted Formula One content, and on my social medias on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, I post a lot of short form content where I built up a pretty big audience. On those, I focus on auction analysis, cars that have depreciated a lot, and comparing expensive cars versus cheaper alternatives. And I might bring some of that content over here in a longer form analysis style, but this is mostly going to be focused on my ownership experience of the GR86 as well as helping people understand what car is right for them and at what price point. So I'm really hoping we can dive into more things in the future. Now, if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, I would love if you subscribed and followed along. And with that, I'll see you in the next video.